I'm Natalie Sullivan, 35 years old and a single mom. There I sat, watching my daughter Lily staring at her half-eaten birthday cake and unopened presents. I checked my phone again. 5 unanswered messages to my parents. Lily looked up with those innocent eyes. "Mommy, why didn't Grandma and Grandpa come?" I fought back tears, struggling to find words. The truth was unbearable. I've been paying my parents $700 every single week for the past 3 years, but they couldn't even show up for my daughter's birthday. Before I dive deeper into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever dealt with family disappointment. Trust me, what happened next in this story will leave you speechless, just like I was when I discovered the real reason behind my parents' absence. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in suburban Boston. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, Harold Thompson, was an accountant, and my mother, Linda, worked as an office manager. But behind closed doors, perfection wasn't just expected, it was demanded. My parents set impossibly high standards for everything I did. A 95% on a test would be met with, "What happened to the other 5%? Making the volleyball team wasn't enough. I needed to be team captain. Second place in the science fair meant I simply hadn't tried hard enough. Nothing was ever good enough for Harold and Linda Thompson. I spent my childhood and teenage years desperately trying to earn their approval. I graduated high school with honors, got accepted to Boston University with a partial scholarship, and was on track to make them proud with a business degree. Then came my final year of college, and everything changed. I met Brian Sullivan at a campus mixer. He was charming, ambitious, studying finance, and my parents actually approved of him. We dated for 6 months before I discovered I was pregnant. When I told Brian, he seemed supportive at first. When I told my parents, their reaction was immediate disappointment. "You've ruined your future," my mother said, not even attempting to hide her disgust. "After everything we've done for you." My father wouldn't even look at me. "This is what happens when you make poor decisions, Natalie." Despite their reaction, I was determined to finish my degree. I took online classes during my final semester, graduated 3 months pregnant, and tried to make the best of things. Brian and I got married in a small ceremony that my parents attended with forced smiles and judgmental glances. For a while we tried to make it work. Lily was born, and I fell completely in love with my daughter. Brian seemed to adjust to fatherhood, though he was increasingly distant. When Lily turned 2, I came home from my marketing coordinator job to find Brian gone, along with his clothes and our joint savings account. The note he left simply said he wasn't cut out for this life. The divorce left me financially devastated. Child support payments from Brian were inconsistent at best, and my entry-level salary barely covered our basic needs. I had to downsize to a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. My parents, while never missing an opportunity to remind me that they told me so, reluctantly offered to help with childcare, but with a condition. "We're not a free babysitting service," my father said during a tense dinner at their house. "We've worked hard for our retirement, and our time is valuable. If you want us to watch Lily while you work, we'll need compensation." I was shocked. "You want me to pay you to watch your own granddaughter?" $700 a week seems fair, my mother added, as if discussing a business transaction. "That's less than what you'd pay for professional childcare." She was right about that. Quality daycare in our area would have cost more, and I was desperate. Despite the financial burden, I agreed. Each week, I wrote them a check for $700, sometimes having to skip meals myself to make the payment. To afford it, I picked up freelance marketing work on weekends, sold most of my personal possessions, and never bought anything new for myself. Every spare dollar went to either Lily's needs or my parents' weekly payments. I lived in a constant state of financial anxiety, checking my bank account multiple times a day, terrified of overdrafts. The arrangement worked logistically. My parents were reliable with their schedules, and Lily had a safe place to stay while I worked. But emotionally, something was missing. I'd pick Lily up to find her sitting alone watching TV while my mother played bridge with friends. My father barely interacted with her. They fed and housed her, but there was little affection or interest in her development. Grandpa never plays with me, Lily told me one night as I tucked her into bed. They're just a little old-fashioned, sweetie, I said, hiding my disappointment. They love you in their own way. But as time went on, I began to wonder if that was true. Despite taking $700 from me each week, they never bought Lily birthday presents, rarely attended her school events, and seemed irritated whenever I was late picking her up. The tension between us grew, but I felt trapped. Without their help, I couldn't keep my job, and without my job, I couldn't support Lily. What kind of grandparents had to be paid to spend time with their grandchild? The question haunted me, but I pushed it aside, telling myself that this arrangement, however unusual, was the best option for Lily. I was wrong. Lily's 8th birthday was approaching, and I was determined to make it special. For weeks, I planned every detail, the decorations, activities, cake, and guest list. I wanted this birthday to be perfect, because the previous ones had been disappointingly small affairs due to my financial constraints. "Mommy, will Grandma and Grandpa come to my party this time?" Lily asked one evening while we were making invitations at our kitchen table. Her little fingers carefully placing stickers on pink paper. My heart ached remembering how they had missed her previous celebrations. Last year, they claimed they had a dental appointment they couldn't reschedule. The year before, it was a neighbor's anniversary dinner they couldn't possibly miss. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure they come this year," I promised, already making a mental note to confirm multiple times with them. The next day when I dropped Lily off, I specifically mentioned the party to my mother. "Mom, Lily's birthday party is on Saturday, the 15th at 2 p.m. It would mean the world to her if you and Dad could come." My mother barely looked up from her magazine. "We'll see, Natalie. Your father might have golf that day. Could you please check your calendar?" Lily specifically asked if you'd be there. She sighed as if I was being unreasonable. "Fine. I'll check with your father." Over the next few weeks, I brought up the party at every opportunity. Sometimes they would nod noncommittally. Other times they would change the subject. Their vague responses left me anxious, but I continued preparations with forced optimism. I spent hours looking through Pinterest for ideas that would impress both Lily and my parents. I ordered special decorations, a custom banner with Lily's name, balloon arches, and themed tableware. I knew my mother appreciated tasteful events, so I opted for a garden fairy theme rather than the cartoon character Lily had initially requested. I even ordered finger sandwiches from my mother's favorite bakery, despite the expense. My best friend Rachel came over one evening to help me assemble party favor bags. "Nat, this seems like a lot for an 8-year-old's party," she observed as I meticulously tied ribbons on lavender sachets, my mother's favorite scent. "I want it to be perfect," I replied, not meeting her eyes. Rachel put down the ribbon she was holding. "Are you doing this for Lily or for your parents?" The question stung because it hit too close to home. Both, I guess. Lily wants them there, and I want them to see that I can pull together a beautiful event despite everything. Rachel's voice softened. "Nat, I've known your parents for 20 years. Don't you think it's strange that they charge their own daughters $700 a week to watch their grandchild? Most grandparents I know would be thrilled to spend time with their grandkids." I felt defensive. They're helping me out. Childcare is expensive. But they're financially comfortable, right? Your dad retired early from his accounting firm. They go on cruises twice a year. Something doesn't add up. I changed the subject, unwilling to confront what Rachel was implying. But her words lingered in my mind as I continued planning. To afford the party, I took on 3 extra freelance projects. I worked late into the night after Lily went to bed, surviving on coffee and determination. The week before the party, I was so exhausted I nearly fell asleep while driving to work. But the thought of Lily's happy face when she saw her grandparents at her party kept me going. The night before the party, I called my parents one last time to confirm. So we'll see you tomorrow at 2, right? I asked, unable to keep the anxiety from my voice. Yes, Natalie, my father replied, sounding annoyed. We said we'll be there. No need to keep pestering us about it. Great, I said, relief washing over me. Lily will be so happy. After hanging up, I stayed up until midnight finishing the decorations, then woke early to clean the apartment and set everything up. As I hung the last streamer, I allowed myself to feel hopeful. Maybe this would be the turning point in my parents' relationship with Lily. Maybe they would finally see what a wonderful, bright child she was and naturally want to be more involved in her life. How naive I was. The morning of Lily's birthday dawned bright and clear. I woke to find her already up, bouncing with excitement in her new dress, a purple frock with butterflies that she'd picked out specially for the occasion. Is it party time yet, Mommy? She asked, twirling around the living room where balloon arches and fairy lights transformed our modest apartment. Not yet, sweetheart. We have a few hours to get everything ready, I smiled, pushing away my nervousness about whether my parents would actually show. By 1:30 p.m., the apartment was ready. The fairy-themed decorations sparkled in the afternoon sunlight, platters of food were artfully arranged, and the bakery cake, which had cost nearly a day's wages, sat proudly on the dining table. Lily's friends began arriving with their parents, filling our small space with laughter and chatter. By 2:15 p.m., most guests had arrived. I found myself glancing at the door every few minutes. Mommy, when are Grandma and Grandpa coming? Lily asked, already wearing the fairy wings I'd gotten her, fluttering between guests with excited energy. Soon, sweetheart. They might be running a little late, I assured her, checking my phone. No messages. I sent a quick text. We're all here waiting for you. Are you on your way? The party games began. Musical chairs, a fairy treasure hunt, and a craft station where the children made wands. Lily kept looking toward the door during activities, her smile faltering slightly each time someone arrived who wasn't her grandparents. By 3 p.m., I called my parents' house. No answer. I tried both their cell phones, straight to voicemail. I sent 3 more text messages with increasing urgency. Has anyone seen my grandparents? Lily asked one of her friends loudly enough that several parents turned to look at me with expressions of pity. I'm sure they're just caught in traffic, honey, I said, forcing brightness into my voice. Why don't we start the next game? Melissa, one of the other mothers, approached me in the kitchen as I was refilling the punch bowl with shaking hands. Everything okay, Natalie? She asked gently. Fine, I replied too quickly. My parents are just running late. Well, the party is lovely. You've done an amazing job, she said, clearly trying to make me feel better. By 4 p.m., it was time for cake. Still no sign of my parents, and no responses to my increasingly frantic messages. Lily stood before her cake, the candles flickering in the dimmed room, and I could see her scanning the crowd of faces for her grandparents before making her wish. The look of disappointment in her eyes was unmistakable, even as she smiled for photos. Make a wish, Lily, the children chorused. She closed her eyes tightly for a moment, then blew out all 8 candles in one breath. Everyone clapped and cheered, but when she opened her eyes, I knew whatever she had wished for hadn't involved the chocolate cake in front of her. During present opening, Lily excitedly unwrapped gifts from her friends. Books, art supplies, toys, thanking each giver with genuine gratitude. I had wrapped my parents' names on a gift I had purchased myself, not wanting Lily to notice their complete absence. When she opened it, a jewelry-making kit she'd been asking for, she looked up. Did Grandma and Grandpa leave already? She asked, confused. They couldn't make it after all, sweetie, I finally admitted, my heart breaking. But they wanted you to have this. Oh, she said simply, setting the gift aside with less enthusiasm than she'd shown for the others. Okay. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, parents thanked me while giving sympathetic glances. I overheard one mother whispering to another. Not even her own parents showed up. That's so sad. By 5:30 p.m., the last guest had left. Lily sat among discarded wrapping paper and deflating balloons, looking smaller than her 8 years. The perfect party I had envisioned and worked so hard for had a gaping hole in it. The two people who should have cared the most hadn't bothered to show up. "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Is that why Grandma and Grandpa didn't come?" I pulled her into my arms, fury and heartbreak battling inside me. "Absolutely not, Lily. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes adults make mistakes and bad choices. This was their mistake, not yours." As she nodded against my shoulder, I made a silent promise that I would never let my parents hurt her like this again. Something had to change. It was time to find out what was really going on. The day after the party, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest and a new emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel toward my parents before: rage. Pure, undiluted rage. Lily had cried herself to sleep, repeatedly asking what she had done to make her grandparents dislike her so much. No explanation I offered could erase the hurt in her eyes. I checked my phone to find a single text message from my mother that had arrived at 3 a.m. "Sorry, we missed Lily's party. We completely forgot. We'll see you Monday for the usual drop-off." They forgot? Forgot? After weeks of reminders, confirmations, and planning? I was about to call when a notification from Facebook stopped me cold. My cousin Jessica had tagged my mother in photos from a neighborhood barbecue, time-stamped during Lily's birthday party. There they were, my parents smiling with neighbors, drinks in hand, clearly having a wonderful time while Lily searched the crowd for them at her birthday. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen not to come. My phone rang. It was Rachel. "Hey, how are you holding up?" she asked. "They were at a barbecue, Rachel," I said, my voice shaking. "They didn't forget. They just decided a neighborhood cookout was more important than their granddaughter's birthday." Rachel was silent for a moment. "Nat, I've been trying to find a gentle way to say this, but after yesterday, your parents are taking advantage of you. $700 a week to watch Lily? Missing her birthday? The constant criticism? This isn't normal, and it's not okay." "I know," I admitted for the first time. "But what choice do I have? I need childcare to work, and I can't afford professional care on my salary." "There are other options," Rachel insisted. "My sister uses a childcare co-op with other parents. There are after-school programs with sliding scale fees. Anything would be better than continuing to fund your parents' retirement while they treat you and Lily like an inconvenience." As Rachel spoke, memories flooded back. My high school graduation, where they left early to attend a dinner party. My college award ceremony, they skipped for a golf tournament. My wedding, where they complained about the cost throughout the reception. This pattern of prioritizing everything and everyone above me wasn't new. I had just normalized it. "You need to confront them," Rachel urged. "Not just about the birthday, but about this entire unhealthy arrangement." After hanging up, I spent the weekend rehearsing what I would say when dropping Lily off on Monday morning. I vacillated between tearful pleading and righteous anger in the conversations I practiced in my head. Whatever approach I took, one thing was clear: things couldn't continue as they were. Monday morning arrived with a knot in my stomach. Lily was uncharacteristically quiet during breakfast. "Do I have to go to Grandma and Grandpa's today?" she asked, pushing her cereal around. "Just for today," I promised. "Things might change soon." "They don't like me," she said matter-of-factly, breaking my heart. "That's not true, honey," I said automatically, but even to my own ears, the reassurance sounded hollow. During the drive, I thought about how much I had sacrificed to maintain this arrangement with my parents, not just financially, but emotionally. I had surrendered my self-respect, accepted their judgment, and worst of all, allowed their indifference to hurt Lily, all while paying them an amount that had left me in perpetual financial struggle. I realized that my entire relationship with my parents had been built on seeking their approval, an approval that had always been conditionally offered and quickly withdrawn. I had been trained since childhood to believe that their love had to be earned, and even then, it was never quite secure. And now, I was allowing them to do the same thing to Lily. As we pulled into their driveway, I made my decision. Today wasn't just about confronting them about the missed birthday. It was about breaking a generational cycle of emotional manipulation and conditional love. For Lily's sake, and for mine, it was time to stand up to Harold and Linda Thompson. We arrived at my parents' immaculate colonial home at 7:45 a.m., the same time I'd been dropping Lily off every weekday for 3 years. My hands trembled slightly as I turned off the engine, and I took a deep breath to steady myself. "Ready, sweetie?" I asked Lily, forcing a smile. She nodded reluctantly, clutching her backpack to her chest like armor. The front door opened before we reached it. My mother stood there in her perfectly pressed slacks and cashmere sweater, looking as put together as always. "You're 2 minutes late," she said by way of greeting. No apology for missing the birthday, no acknowledgement of the hurt they'd caused. "Good morning to you too, Mom," I replied, the sarcasm barely contained. Lily gave me a startled look. I never spoke to my mother this way. "Lily, why don't you go put your things in the den? I think there's a new puzzle in the cabinet you might like," my father called from the kitchen, appearing with a coffee mug in hand. His tone was artificially bright, as if the weekend had never happened. Once Lily was out of earshot, I turned to face them both. "We need to talk about Saturday." My mother waved her hand dismissively. Yes, we missed the little party. We already texted our apology. These things happen. These things happen?" I repeated, incredulous. "You broke my daughter's heart. She spent the entire party looking for you, asking where you were, wondering what she did wrong to make her grandparents not show up." My father sighed as if I was being dramatic. "It was just a child's birthday party, Natalie. There will be others. It wasn't just anything. It was important to Lily, which should have made it important to you." I could feel my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "And it wasn't that you couldn't come. You chose not to." I saw the Facebook photos from the Hendersons' barbecue. A flicker of surprise crossed my mother's face before her expression hardened. "Are you monitoring our social media now?" "We're allowed to have our own lives, Natalie." "Of course you are. But don't lie to me about forgetting when you made a deliberate choice to go elsewhere after promising a child, your granddaughter, that you'd be at her birthday." "We never promised," my father began. "You did," I cut him off. "Multiple times. I confirmed with you the night before." An uncomfortable silence fell. My mother crossed her arms defensively while my father took a long sip of coffee. "And while we're having this conversation," I continued, seizing the moment, "let's talk about the $700 a week I've been paying you." My father's posture changed immediately, straightening as if preparing for battle. "That's our agreed-upon arrangement for childcare." "Yes, an arrangement that's been financially crippling me for years. I've been skipping meals, working multiple jobs, and living paycheck to paycheck to afford those payments." "That's hardly our fault," my mother interjected. "If you'd made better life choices, you wouldn't be in this position. We're providing a service at market rate." "A service?" I echoed. "She's your granddaughter, not a client. Most grandparents would be grateful for time with their grandchild. They certainly wouldn't charge for it." My father set his mug down with a sharp click against the granite countertop. "We didn't ask for the responsibility of raising another child at our age, Natalie. Our friends are traveling, enjoying retirement. Instead, we're tied down 5 days a week." "Do you even need the money?" I asked suddenly, the question that had been brewing in my mind for months finally surfacing. "You're both comfortably retired, your house is paid off, you take multiple vacations a year." A look passed between them that confirmed what I had suspected. "That's beside the point," my mother said stiffly. "No, that's exactly the point," I pressed. "Are you charging me because you need the money? Or for some other reason?" My father's face flushed with anger or embarrassment. "Perhaps both. The money isn't the issue, it's the principle." "What principle?" "That actions have consequences," he snapped. "You got pregnant, you got divorced, you made your bed. The payments ensure you understand the cost of your decisions." The truth hit me like a physical blow. So this was never about childcare. It was about punishing me. "Not punishing," my mother corrected, her voice cool. Teaching responsibility. I laughed bitterly. Responsibility? I'm a single mother working full-time plus freelance jobs, raising a child alone, making every sacrifice possible for her well-being, and you think I need lessons in responsibility? If you'd been responsible in the first place, my mother began. Stop, I interrupted, my voice low but firm. Lily is not a mistake or a punishment. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, and I won't let you treat her as anything less than the gift she is. We've done nothing but help you since that man left you, my father said indignantly. Help me? You've been charging me more than my mortgage payment every week? And for what? To leave Lily alone in front of the TV while you play bridge or golf? To make her feel like an unwanted burden? To miss every important event in her life? Don't be so dramatic, Natalie. This is exactly the kind of poor attitude that what, Mom? That led to my poor life choices? I was beyond caring about their approval now. Let me tell you something. The only poor choice I've made was believing that you actually cared about Lily or me, that you could put someone else's needs above your own for once in your lives. My mother's face hardened into the disapproving mask I'd seen countless times throughout my childhood. If that's how you feel, perhaps this arrangement isn't working anymore. You're right. It's not. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Starting today, I won't be paying you anymore. You can either be real grandparents to Lily, loving, supportive, present, or you can stay out of our lives entirely. But I'm done paying for your conditional love. My father's face reddened. You can't just change the terms of our agreement. We've built our plans around that income. His admission sent a chill through me. They really had been counting on and using my money I'd struggled desperately to provide, often at the expense of my own needs. What exactly have you been doing with the money? I asked, a new suspicion forming. Neither answered immediately, their silence damning. I want to see your office, I said suddenly, moving toward my father's study. A room I rarely entered. Now wait just a minute, my father started, moving to block my path, but I was already pushing past him. What I would discover there would change everything. I pushed open the heavy oak door to my father's study with determined force. The room smelled of leather and expensive cologne, the scent of my childhood, when being called into this space usually meant I was in trouble. My father followed close behind, protesting, Natalie, you have no right to barge in here. This is our private space. But I was already scanning the room, taking in details I'd never paid attention to before. The new leather furniture that hadn't been there last year, the large-screen computer monitor, the golf clubs in the corner, with price tags still attached. On my father's meticulously organized desk sat a folder labeled Income Tracking 2023 to 2025. With shaking hands, I flipped it open before he could stop me. Inside were detailed spreadsheets showing all their income sources. One column was labeled Natalie Childcare with weekly entries of $700. Over 3 years, I had paid them more than $109,000. You've been tracking it like a business, I said quietly, the reality of how they viewed our arrangement finally sinking in. Put that down, my father demanded, reaching for the folder, but I moved it away, continuing to flip through pages. What I found next made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing transfers to an account labeled Vacation Property. I pulled out the paper, staring in disbelief at the amounts, all roughly matching the timeline of my payments. You bought a vacation home? I whispered. With my money? My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale. We've been planning that purchase for years. Your payments simply helped accelerate our timeline. While I've been living paycheck to paycheck? While I've been buying Lily's clothes from thrift stores and cutting coupons for groceries? I continued digging through the files, discovering credit card statements showing charges for luxury cruises, high-end restaurants, country club memberships, all dated during the period I'd been paying them. You told me you couldn't afford to help me more, I said, my voice rising with each word. You watched me struggle financially for years while using my money for this. I pulled out my phone and began taking photos of the documents, my hands trembling with rage. What are you doing? My father demanded. Documenting. In case I need it later. As I moved around the desk, I noticed a drawer slightly ajar. Inside was a leather-bound book, my mother's handwriting visible on the pages. I recognized it as the journal she'd kept for years. I pulled it out and flipped it open, ignoring her cry of protest. The 15th of October 2023. Another day watching Lily while Natalie works. The child never stops talking. I'm exhausted by the time she leaves. Thank goodness for the compensation. At least there's that silver lining. Harold and I are looking at waterfront properties in Florida this weekend. The 3rd of December 2023. Natalie asked if we could reduce the weekly payment during the holidays. Absolutely not. She got herself into this situation. She can deal with the consequences. Besides, we've already put a deposit on the boat. The 20th of January 2024. Had to cancel Bridge Club because Natalie had a work emergency and brought Lily over early. This arrangement is becoming more inconvenient by the day. At least the payments are consistent, better than our dividend returns lately. I closed the journal, feeling physically ill. You resent her, I said, looking at my mother. You resent your own granddaughter. For once, my mother had the decency to look ashamed, but only briefly. It's not that simple, Natalie. We've done our duty. Duty? I cut her off. She's a child who loves you, who just wanted you at her birthday party, who draws pictures for you that you throw away when she leaves. She's not a duty. I continued searching, finding more evidence of their exploitation, not just of me, but others. A document showed they were charging my uncle rent to stay in their guest house while he recovered from surgery. Another folder revealed they'd been paid to babysit my cousin's children at family gatherings. You've been doing this to everyone, I realized aloud. Monetizing every family relationship. My father straightened his posture, attempting to regain control of the situation. We provide value, and we expect compensation. There's nothing wrong with that. There's everything wrong with that when it comes to family. I slammed the folder down on his desk. But what's truly unforgivable is how you've treated Lily. She deserves grandparents who love her unconditionally, who show up for her, who make her feel valued, not like an inconvenient business transaction. I gathered the most damning documents and held them against my chest. I'm taking these. You can't just, my father began. I can, and I am, I interrupted. And now I want you to answer one question honestly. Did you ever really want to be part of Lily's life? The silence that followed was answer enough. But my father eventually spoke. We never approved of you having her, he said coldly. We warned you about keeping the pregnancy, about how it would derail your life. Everything that's happened since, the divorce, your financial struggles. We predicted it all. The arrangement was our way of making sure you understood the gravity of your choices. The cruel honesty was almost a relief. Finally, the truth laid bare after years of pretense. Well, let me tell you about my choice, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. My daughter is the best decision I ever made, and removing toxic people from her life, even if they're family, is the second best. I walked out of the office, documents in hand, to find Lily standing in the hallway, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. How much had she heard? We're leaving, sweetheart, I said as gently as I could. Get your backpack. As we headed for the door, my mother called after us. What about our arrangement? Who's going to watch her now? I turned back one last time. That's no longer your concern, and neither are we. The door closed behind us with a finality that felt like both an ending and a beginning. In the car, the reality of what had just happened hit me like a physical wave. My hands shook so badly I couldn't insert the key into the ignition. Tears I'd been holding back for years spilled down my cheeks. Beside me, Lily sat silently, her small face a mixture of confusion and concern. "Mommy, why are you crying?" she asked, reaching out to touch my arm. I wiped my eyes, trying to pull myself together for her sake. "I'm just a little sad and angry right now, sweetie. But we're going to be okay." "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at me?" The quiver in her voice broke my heart. No, honey, they're not mad at you. This is about grown-up problems that have nothing to do with you. I finally managed to start the car. We're going to go somewhere to figure things out, okay? Instead of heading to work, I drove to a nearby cafe that I knew had a small play area for children. On the way, I called my office to let them know I had a family emergency and wouldn't be in today. Then I called Rachel. "Can you meet us at Sunshine Cafe?" I asked, my voice still unsteady. I just confronted my parents, and I need help figuring out what to do next. Rachel, bless her, didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. At the cafe, I ordered hot chocolate for Lily and sent her to the play area where she could be distracted by the toys while staying within my sight. Rachel arrived shortly after, taking one look at my face before wrapping me in a tight hug. "What happened?" she asked, as we sat at a table near the play area. I told her everything. The confrontation, the discovery of the financial documents, the vacation home, my mother's journal, and their final admission about never approving of Lily. As I spoke, Rachel's expression shifted from concern to outrage. Those manipulative, selfish. She stopped herself, glancing at Lily playing nearby. I knew they were difficult, but this is beyond anything I imagined. "What am I going to do, Rachel?" I asked, feeling the panic rise again. "I can't afford professional childcare, I have to work, and now I've burned my bridge with them. I don't have a backup plan." Rachel reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "First of all, you did the right thing. What they were doing was emotional and financial abuse, plain and simple." She paused, thinking. "Second, this is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. Let's look at your finances without that $700 weekly drain." I pulled out a notebook from my purse, and we began calculating. Without the payments to my parents, my financial situation looked dramatically different. I could actually afford a modest childcare program if I found the right one. "You've been paying your parents $36,400 a year," Rachel said, circling the number she'd calculated. "Do you realize what you can do with that money now?" For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope about my financial future. But the childcare issue remained immediate and pressing. "I still need somewhere for Lily to go while I work, starting tomorrow," I said. "She can stay with me for the rest of this week," Rachel offered immediately. "I'm working from home. That will give you time to research options." As we talked through possibilities, after-school programs, childcare cooperatives, potential schedule adjustments at my job, I felt the vice grip of anxiety slowly loosen. There were solutions. Difficult ones, requiring adjustments, but not impossible. "I can't believe how much they took from me," I said, looking through the photos I'd taken of their financial documents on my phone. "Over $100,000 in 3 years. Have you considered legal action?" Rachel asked cautiously. "You might have a case for financial exploitation." I shook my head. I agreed to the arrangement, even if I was manipulated into it. Besides, dragging this into court would only expose Lily to more trauma. "I just want to move forward." Rachel nodded in understanding. "Then consider this the most expensive lesson you'll ever learn about setting boundaries, but also the most valuable." We spent the next hour researching childcare options on our phones, making calls, and developing a plan. By the time we finished our second round of coffee, I had appointments to visit 3 different after-school programs, a list of potential babysitters to interview, and a script to discuss flexible work hours with my boss. "What about your parents?" Rachel asked as we were preparing to leave. "Do you think they'll try to contact you?" "Eventually, when they realize the money has stopped," I sighed, feeling a complex mix of grief and resolve. But I'm done with their manipulation. From now on, any relationship with Lily happens on my terms, healthy terms. As I drove home with Lily that afternoon, I felt lighter despite the uncertainty ahead. For the first time in years, I wouldn't have to write that weekly check. I wouldn't have to beg for scraps of affection for my daughter from people who saw her as a burden. I wouldn't have to apologize for existing, for making choices they didn't approve of. That evening, as Lily and I ate dinner at our small kitchen table, she looked up from her mac and cheese. "Are we still going to see Grandma and Grandpa?" she asked. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Not for a while, honey. We're going to try something new. Starting tomorrow, you'll go to Rachel's after school while I work. And then we'll find a fun after-school program where you can make new friends." Lily seemed to consider this, twirling pasta around her fork. "Grandpa never played with me anyway," she said simply. And Grandma always looked at her watch when I talked. Out of the mouths of babes. She had seen the truth all along. "You know what?" I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "I think it's time we redecorated your room. How would you feel about that butterfly wallpaper you liked at the store last month?" Her eyes widened. "Really? You said it was too expensive." "Things have changed," I smiled. "We have a little more money for the things that matter now." That night, as I tucked her in, I made a silent promise. Never again would I allow anyone to make my child feel less than precious, even if they were family. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the most necessary ones. And sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need. It was time to build something better. 1 month after the confrontation with my parents, our apartment looked dramatically different. Gone was the worn-out futon that had served as our living room couch for years. In its place stood a comfortable second-hand sectional, nothing fancy, but without holes or stains. Lily's room boasted the butterfly wallpaper she'd been dreaming of, and for the first time since her birth, I had replaced my lumpy mattress with one that didn't hurt my back every morning. These small changes were physical manifestations of a larger transformation in our lives. Without the crushing $700 weekly payment, I could finally breathe financially. We weren't wealthy by any means, but the constant knife edge of financial disaster had receded. The most significant change, however, came in the form of Diana Wagner, our upstairs neighbor. A retired kindergarten teacher in her early 60s with kind eyes and seemingly endless patience, Diana had lived above us for 2 years, yet we'd barely exchanged more than pleasantries in the hallway. 3 days after my fallout with my parents, I'd run into her while collecting mail. "You seem stressed, dear," she'd observed with genuine concern. "Everything all right?" Before I knew it, I was telling her about my childcare crisis, the words tumbling out to this virtual stranger. Instead of backing away from my emotional unloading, Diana's eyes had lit up. "I've been looking for something meaningful to do with my afternoons," she'd said. "I miss being around children since I retired. What if I watched Lily after school 3 days a week? You could pay me what you can afford, and we'll both benefit." I'd been skeptical at first. Solutions rarely appeared so neatly packaged. But a background check, several trial afternoons, and Lily's immediate adoration of Miss Diana had convinced me. Unlike my parents, Diana genuinely engaged with Lily, helping with homework, teaching her to bake, listening to her stories with actual interest. "Miss Diana says I'm a natural artist," Lily announced one evening, proudly displaying a watercolor painting of butterflies. "She's going to teach me about perspective next week." The contrast to my parents' dismissive attitude was stark. Diana saw Lily, really saw her, appreciating her personality, talents, and even her challenges in a way my parents never had. For the remaining 2 weekdays, I'd discovered a solution through an unlikely source. The single-parent support group Rachel had urged me to join. There, I met Jason, a divorced father of twin 9-year-old boys who worked remotely 3 days a week. We developed a childcare exchange. He watched Lily along with his sons on Mondays and Wednesdays, while I took all 3 children on Tuesdays when he had in-office meetings. "The kids get along like they've known each other forever," Jason remarked one evening when he dropped Lily off. "My boys have never been so excited about homework. Apparently, they're competing to impress your daughter with their math skills." Lily flourished under this new arrangement. Without the subtle undercurrent of rejection she'd felt at my parents' house, she became more confident and animated. Her teacher commented on the positive change during our spring conference. Lily's participation in class has increased significantly these past few weeks, Mrs. Reynolds noted. She's volunteering answers, engaging with other children more freely. Whatever changes you've made at home, they're working. The changes extended to my professional life as well. Without the stress of managing my parents' disapproval and the constant financial pressure, my work performance improved dramatically. 2 weeks after our fallout, my boss called me into his office, not for a reprimand as I'd feared, but with surprising news. "We're promoting you to Senior Marketing Coordinator," he announced. "Your recent campaign proposals have been exceptionally creative, and the team has noticed your renewed energy. The position comes with a 15% raise and more flexible hours." The timing couldn't have been better. The additional income and flexibility further stabilized our new childcare arrangement. Of course, my parents didn't disappear quietly from our lives. The first Monday after our confrontation, my phone had exploded with calls and messages, first demanding, then pleading for Lily to be dropped off as usual. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted to guilt-tripping. "After everything we've done for you," my mother's voicemail said, "this is how you repay us? By cutting us off from our only grandchild?" I deleted the message without responding. 2 weeks in, my father tried a different approach, claiming my mother had fallen ill from the stress of our estrangement. I almost called back until Rachel reminded me of similar tactics they'd used throughout my childhood to manipulate me. "Remember when they told you your mother was too upset to attend your school play after you got the supporting role instead of the lead?" she asked. "This is the same playbook, Nat. Don't fall for it." By the third week, they'd enlisted flying monkeys, relatives and family friends calling to tell me how unreasonable I was being, how I was breaking my parents' hearts. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The final attempt came as a text from my father. "Your mother is in the hospital. Heart-related issues. Doctors say it's stress-induced. Are you satisfied now?" Instead of rushing to the hospital as I might have previously, I called my Aunt Susan, my father's sister, and the one relative who had always been straight with me. "Is Mom really in the hospital?" I asked when she answered. "Hospital?" She sounded confused. "No, they're at the airport. Harold mentioned something about a last-minute trip to their place in Florida. Said they needed to get away from all the drama. Why would you think she's in the hospital?" The confirmation of their manipulations solidified my resolve. I blocked their numbers that day. As the weeks passed and our new life took shape, I realized something surprising. I felt lighter without my parents' presence. The constant need for their approval, the walking on eggshells, the financial strain, all gone. In their place was a growing sense of confidence in my own decisions. "You're standing taller," Diana observed one afternoon when I came to pick up Lily. "When I first met you, you seemed to be carrying the weight of the world. Not anymore." She was right. By setting boundaries with my toxic parents, I hadn't just improved our financial situation, I'd reclaimed my sense of self-worth. And more importantly, I'd shown Lily that she deserved respect and genuine love, not conditional approval that had to be purchased. The hardest lesson had been accepting that the loving grandparent-grandchild relationship I'd hoped for was never going to materialize with my parents. But in its place, Lily was developing meaningful connections with Diana, with Jason and his sons, and with the other adults in our expanding social circle, people who valued her for exactly who she was. As spring bloomed into early summer, so did our lives, unfolding in new and unexpected ways, rooted in authenticity rather than obligation. The pain of family rejection remained, but it no longer defined us. We were writing a new story now, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited to see how it would unfold. 6 months after the confrontation at my parents' house, Lily and I sat at our kitchen table, addressing invitations for her half-birthday celebration. The tradition had started 3 months earlier, when Lily had tentatively asked if we could have a do-over birthday party, one without the shadow of her grandparents' absence hanging over it. "Of course we can," I'd told her. "We can celebrate you any day we want." So we'd decided on half birthdays, quarter birthdays, and just because you're awesome days, small celebrations that belonged entirely to us, untainted by past disappointments. Can we invite Miss Diana and Jason and the twins? Lily asked, carefully writing names on colorful envelopes. Absolutely. And Rachel, of course. Anyone else? Lily hesitated, her crayon hovering over the last blank invitation. What about Grandma and Grandpa? Do they still hate us? The question caught me off guard. We hadn't spoken about my parents much in recent months, and I'd assumed Lily was processing their absence in her own way. They don't hate us, sweetie, I said carefully. They just don't know how to show love in healthy ways. Will we ever see them again? Her voice was neutral, more curious than distressed. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe someday, if things change. Would you want to? She considered this seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration. Only if they're nicer, and if they actually want to play with me instead of looking at their phones all the time. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Her simple wisdom reflected exactly the boundaries I'd been working to establish. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat on our new couch, reflecting on the changes of the past 6 months. My financial situation had stabilized significantly. The combination of not paying my parents, my promotion, and more careful budgeting meant I'd even started a modest savings account for Lily's future education. But the emotional transformation was even more profound. In therapy, a luxury I could finally afford once a month, I was unpacking the legacy of conditional love I'd inherited from my parents, breaking patterns I hadn't even recognized as unhealthy because they'd been so normalized throughout my childhood. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it warily, then froze at the message. We'd like to talk. No pressure, no demands. Just a conversation. We miss Lily. And you, Mom and Dad. A year ago, this message would have sent me into an anxious spiral, desperate to please them and restore harmony at any cost. Now, I felt calm as I considered my options. They'd tried various manipulation tactics over the months, from guilt-tripping to fake emergencies, but this message seemed different, simpler, perhaps even genuine. After consulting with my therapist, I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I arranged for Lily to spend the afternoon with Diana, not wanting to expose her to potential disappointment if things went poorly. When I arrived at the cafe, my parents were already seated at a corner table. They looked older somehow, less intimidating than I remembered. My mother's perfect makeup couldn't hide the new worry lines around her eyes. My father's posture, usually commanding, seemed slightly hunched. "Thank you for coming," my mother said as I sat down. No criticism about my casual clothes or unmanicured nails, a small but noticeable change. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked directly, maintaining the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. They exchanged glances before my father spoke. "We've been doing some reflecting these past months. After you left, well, it forced us to look at things differently." My mother nodded. "We found a family therapist. We've been going weekly. She's challenged many of our perspectives." I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. My parents had always dismissed therapy as something for weak people who couldn't solve their own problems. "What perspectives has she challenged?" I asked cautiously. "Our view of what families should be," my father admitted. "Our transactional approach to relationships. The way we treated Lily," my mother added softly. "The way we've always treated you." Their words seemed rehearsed but not insincere. I remained silent, waiting. "We're not asking for things to go back to how they were," my father continued. "We understand that's not possible or healthy. But we'd like an opportunity to be a part of Lily's life again, on whatever terms you decide are appropriate." "And the financial arrangement is completely off the table," my mother added quickly. "We were wrong to take advantage that way." I studied their faces, looking for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to detecting. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar: uncertainty, vulnerability, maybe even remorse. "I appreciate what you're saying," I said carefully. "But words aren't enough. Lily deserves grandparents who value her for who she is, not what she represents or how she fits into their expectations. "We want to try," my mother said, and to my shock, her eyes filled with tears. "We don't want to lose you both. The house has been so empty without Lily's energy, without your visits." "Our therapist suggested starting small," my father added. "Perhaps a supervised visit in a public place, a park or a restaurant. Just an hour to begin with." I considered their proposal. The old Natalie would have jumped at this olive branch, eager to restore peace at any cost. The new Natalie recognized that healthy relationships required more than just avoiding conflict. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But I need you to understand something first. If you come back into Lily's life, it will be because you genuinely want a relationship with her, not because you feel obligated, not because you miss the control, and certainly not because you expect any financial benefit." They both nodded solemnly. "And if I see any signs of the old patterns, the criticism, the conditional affection, the manipulation, you'll be out of our lives again, permanently." "We understand," my father said quietly. "We're trying to change. It's not easy at our age, but losing you both has been a wake-up call." As I walked back to my car after the meeting, I felt strangely peaceful. I didn't know if their apparent transformation was genuine or sustainable. I didn't know if they could truly become the loving grandparents Lily deserved. But I knew that whatever happened, I was strong enough to protect both Lily and myself from toxic relationships. The following weekend, we had a trial visit, a picnic at the local park. I watched with cautious optimism as my father actually pushed Lily on the swings when she asked, something he'd never done before. My mother had brought homemade cookies, Lily's favorite kind. Another small but meaningful gesture. There were still awkward moments, still flashes of the old behavior patterns trying to reassert themselves. But there were also glimpses of what might be possible with time, boundaries, and continued effort on all sides. As the months passed, these visits became more frequent, always on my terms, always with clear expectations. My parents never watched Lily alone. Our new childcare arrangement continued unchanged, but they slowly earned limited space in our lives through consistent respect for our boundaries. 1 year after our initial confrontation, Lily and I sat together on our couch looking through photos of her most recent birthday party, a joyful celebration attended by friends who had become chosen family. My parents had been there too, bringing thoughtfully selected gifts and genuinely participating in the festivities. "Grandpa actually played musical chairs," Lily giggled, pointing to a photo of my father awkwardly navigating the children's game. "He did," I agreed, still somewhat amazed by the transformation. "Are they going to stay nice now?" she asked, her perceptiveness once again catching me off guard. "I hope so, honey. People can change when they realize they need to. But even if they don't stay nice, you and I will be okay." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "I like our life now. It feels warmer." Warmer. The perfect word for what we'd created. A life built on genuine connection rather than obligation or appearance. A life where Lily was surrounded by people who truly saw and valued her. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still moments when I questioned my decisions, still days when the pain of family dysfunction felt overwhelming. But I never regretted setting those boundaries, never regretted prioritizing Lily's emotional well-being and my own over maintaining toxic relationships. The greatest lesson I'd learned was that family isn't determined solely by blood. Family consists of the people who show up authentically, who love without conditions, who support without expecting payment. Sometimes that includes biological relatives. Sometimes it doesn't. What matters isn't preserving relationships at any cost, but building connections that nurture rather than drain, that lift up rather than tear down. And that's a lesson worth every penny of the $109,000 it cost me to learn. What would you do if a family member treated you the way my parents treated me? Would you have given them a second chance, or cut ties completely? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most, but they're often the most necessary. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps anyone facing similar challenges with family relationships.